It has no claws, no fangs, and no wings. It cannot run fast, and nearly everything around it wants to eat it. Yet hidden inside this tiny, vulnerable body is the blueprint for one of nature's most extraordinary transformations. But before this caterpillar can ever become a butterfly, it must survive a world filled with predators, parasites, poison, and one enemy capable of turning its own body against it. Our story begins where almost no one is looking. On the underside of a single leaf, a tiny egg trembles. Something is moving inside it. The shell splits, and a newly hatched caterpillar pulls itself into the open air for the very first time. There are no parents waiting, no one to guide it, no one to guard it. It does not know what the world is, or what is already hunting for it. From this first breath, it is entirely on its own. Its first act is a quiet one. In many species, the caterpillar turns and eats the very shell it just escaped from, reclaiming the nutrients sealed inside. And then it begins the task that will define nearly its entire childhood. It eats. But every bite it takes sends a signal to the hungry world around it. There is food on this leaf. The caterpillar does not eat because it is greedy. It eats because it is running out of time. Its primary biological task during this stage is to gather energy, build tissue, and grow. A monarch caterpillar, for example, can reach nearly 2,000 times its original hatching mass before it pupates, a staggering rate of increase, though the exact figures vary from one species to another. Day after day, it converts leaf into muscle, fat, and living tissue, feeding almost without pause. But there is a problem built into its own body. A caterpillar wears its supporting skeleton on the outside, an exoskeleton that cannot expand forever. As the body swells, that outer casing becomes a cage. So the caterpillar does something that would look alarming in almost any other animal. Before each molt, a new, soft cuticle forms beneath the old one. Then the old covering splits down the back, and the caterpillar pulls itself free before the fresh surface expands and hardens. It will do this several times as it grows, moving through stage after stage of its young life. And each time, there is a moment of danger. Fresh out of its old skin, the new surface is soft and pale, not yet hardened. For a short while, the caterpillar is slower, weaker, and far easier to hurt, exposed at the exact moment it can least afford to be. The leaf around it is everything at once. It is food, it is shelter, and, in some species, it is a source of chemical weapons the caterpillar will learn to steal, but the leaf cannot hide it forever. Every day spent feeding is another day spent in the open, and the whole of the caterpillar's early life becomes a single desperate race. Grow up before something finds you. Because something is always looking. Picture the caterpillar mid-meal, jaws working steadily along the edge of a leaf. It is fed, it is growing, and for a moment, it is undisturbed. Then a shadow slides across the leaf. A bird. Birds are among the most relentless hunters a caterpillar will ever face, and they are experts at one thing in particular: spotting movement. A twitch, a crawl, a chewed leaf edge, all of it can give the caterpillar away. The instant that shadow passes, the caterpillar freezes. It presses its body still against the stem and simply stops being an animal. If it is lucky, the bird's eye slides right over it, reading only a leaf, a twig, a piece of the plant. It is a gamble the caterpillar must win again and again, every hour of every day. The bird moves on. But the dangerous does not. A spider waits in the folds of a nearby leaf, patient and motionless, ready the moment the caterpillar wanders into range. Ants patrol the branches below, and a single caterpillar that cannot defend itself can be overwhelmed by many. Predatory insects hunt eggs and young larvae with piercing mouth parts. And some of the deadliest enemies are ones the caterpillar can never see at all: fungi, viruses, and parasites that do not attack from the outside, but kill quietly from within. Against this entire world, the caterpillar seems almost hopelessly outmatched. It is soft, slow, and defenseless, or at least, that is how it looks. Because over millions of years, caterpillars have evolved an arsenal of defenses that turns their apparent weakness into something far more dangerous than it seems. The most common weapon is invisibility. Many caterpillars are master impersonators. Some are colored and shaped exactly like the leaves they feed on. Others mimic bare twigs, holding their bodies rigid at an angle so convincing that a passing bird sees only dead wood. And some take disguise into stranger territory still, growing up to resemble something no predator wants to touch at all: a fresh, glistening splash of bird droppings. Others choose the opposite strategy. Instead of hiding, they advertise. Some caterpillars carry large false eye spots near the head, and when threatened, they rear up and swell that end of the body until it looks less like a harmless grub and more like the face of a small snake. Some species carry irritating hairs or venom-bearing spines that can make an attacker regret ever touching them. And countless species wear loud, clashing colors, bright warnings that say, in a language predators understand, "I am not worth the risk." But perhaps the most remarkable trick of all is theft. Consider the monarch caterpillar. It feeds almost exclusively on milkweed, a plant loaded with bitter, toxic compounds that most animals avoid. The monarch not only tolerates this poison, it stores a portion of it inside its own body, turning the plant's chemistry into a defense of its own. But nature rarely offers a perfect shield. The strength of that protection isn't absolute. It shifts depending on the milkweed species, the exact compounds involved, and which predator is doing the hunting. Some attackers are deterred, others are not. A stolen weapon is still a gamble. And in the end, none of these defenses matter against the one enemy the caterpillar can neither see nor fight. Because the most terrifying enemy of a caterpillar does not always want to eat it from the outside. This is where the caterpillar's story turns truly dark. A wasp arrives, small, precise, and searching. This is a parasitoid wasp. It is not looking for a meal. Some members of this group use living caterpillars as nurseries for their young. When such a wasp finds a suitable host, it does something almost impossible to watch. It pierces the caterpillar's body and injects its eggs directly inside, planting the next generation within the flesh of a host that is still very much alive. What the wasp leaves behind is more than eggs. In many species, it injects a cocktail of venom and biological factors that can interfere with the caterpillar's own immune defenses, quieting the host's ability to fight back, so the young wasps can develop unopposed. The caterpillar keeps eating, it keeps growing, and all the while, it is feeding the very creatures consuming it from within, its body converted into food and shelter for another animal's offspring. At first, the caterpillar may continue feeding and moving with few obvious signs of what is developing inside it. It goes on with its ordinary life, chewing leaves, freezing at shadows, carrying a hidden brood it has no way of knowing is there. Every instinct it has for survival is still working perfectly. They are simply working for the wrong side now. And in some cases, the horror runs deeper still. In one documented relationship involving wasps of the genus Glyptopantalus, the parasitized caterpillar stops feeding and stands guard over the wasp pupae after the larvae have chewed their way out of its body, thrashing violently at any predator that comes near. Experiments suggest this hijacked bodyguard improves the survival of the very brood that destroyed it. But this is the strategy of some specialized groups, not a fate shared by every parasitoid wasp. Nature's cruelty here is precise, not universal. Even after an egg has been placed inside, the battle is not necessarily over. Some caterpillars can surround and kill parasitoid eggs with their own immune cells, a defense known as encapsulation. Successful wasps counter with venom and other biological tools that suppress or evade that response. And yet, against the birds, against the spiders, against even the parasites, a few caterpillars still make it through. If it escapes the birds, the spiders, and the parasites, the caterpillar will finally face the strangest event of its life. An event from which its old body will never return unchanged. One day, without warning, the eating simply stops. The caterpillar has reached the stage it has been building toward its entire life. The relentless hunger that drove it from the moment it hatched goes quiet. And now, it has one last, critical task to perform. It begins to search, not for food, but for a place to be still, somewhere sheltered, somewhere it will not be easily seen. When it finds the right spot, it anchors itself firmly to the surface, spinning a small pad of silk to grip, and prepares to enter a stage from which it cannot turn back. What happens next depends on what it will become. A butterfly sheds its final larval skin and becomes a pupa, usually called a chrysalis. Many moth caterpillars spin a protective silk cocoon around their pupa, though not every moth does. A chrysalis is the butterfly pupa itself. A cocoon is an additional layer of silk wrapped around it. Whatever form it takes, the meaning is the same. The animal that spent every waking moment feeding and hiding now falls completely still. It seals itself away from the world. And for a creature that has survived by staying alert, by freezing at every shadow, this stillness is the greatest gamble of all, because it is about to become largely immobile and extraordinarily vulnerable, and it is about to be taken apart. Here is where the myth begins. The popular idea that the caterpillar simply dies inside its case, dissolving entirely into a formless soup from which a butterfly somehow appears. It is a haunting image, but it is not quite true, and the reality is far more astonishing. Inside that sealed case, a controlled demolition is underway. Many of the caterpillar's tissues are broken down and dismantled, their materials released to be used again. But this is not total erasure. Some structures survive the process, carried through the transformation and reshaped for a new kind of life. Parts of the nervous system, elements of the body's core machinery, these are not destroyed and rebuilt from nothing. They are remodeled. And crucially, the design for the adult was already present all along, long before the caterpillar sealed itself away. Even during its life as a feeding larva, small clusters of cells lay hidden inside its body, held in reserve and waiting. These developing structures are often called imaginal tissues or imaginal discs. They are the founding cells of the adult body. Once transformation begins, they awaken and grow with extraordinary speed, working alongside remodeled larval tissue and drawing on the dissolved material around them to build the structures a caterpillar never had. The wings, the long slender legs, the compound eyes, the delicate sensing antenna. It is one of the strangest facts in all of biology that a single animal can partly take itself apart and reassemble into a creature so different that we give the two forms entirely separate names. The soft, ground-bound eater and the winged flyer are not two animals. They are two chapters of one. So the butterfly does not come from nowhere. It was never a random creature conjured out of liquid. The blueprint was written into the caterpillar's body from the start, folded away and dormant, simply waiting for the moment to be read. The caterpillar is not replaced by a butterfly. It is rebuilt into one. After days, weeks, or, when a seasonal pause called diapause sets in, sometimes many months, the case begins to change. A thin crack appears along the surface of the chrysalis. It widens, and slowly, an adult begins to force its way out into the light. But this is not yet the triumphant creature we imagine. What emerges looks fragile and unfinished, its body swollen, its wings small, damp, and crumpled tightly against its sides. It cannot fly, it can barely move, and it has arrived, once again, at a moment of terrible vulnerability. Now begins a race against time. The newly emerged butterfly climbs to a where it can hang freely, and it begins to pump hemolymph, the insect equivalent of blood, through the veins of its folded wings, forcing them to expand toward their full size. Slowly, the wings stretch outward until they reach their full shape. Then, they must stiffen and dry. Only when both wings are fully expanded and hardened will they be strong enough to carry the animal into the air. Until that moment, it is almost defenseless. It cannot escape a predator. It cannot flee a passing bird. Everything the caterpillar survived, the hiding, the molting, the parasites, the poison, the long stillness inside the case, all of it comes down to these final, exposed minutes and hours, waiting for a pair of wings to become real. In this exposed window, the most fragile creature in the entire story is not the newborn caterpillar at all. It is the almost finished butterfly. And then, at last, the wings are ready. The butterfly tests them once, twice, and lifts off the surface into its very first flight. The creature that flies away is living an entirely different life from the one it left behind. The caterpillar existed to eat and to grow. That chapter is over. The adult has a new purpose now, the final task of the whole cycle: to travel, to find a mate, and to pass life forward to the next generation. Where the caterpillar spent most of its life close to its host plant, the winged adult can travel far beyond it. And so, the story bends back toward its beginning. Somewhere, on some distant day, a female butterfly will search for exactly the right kind of plant, the specific leaf her own young will need to survive. And there, on the underside of it, she will leave behind a single, tiny egg. The same quiet beginning, the same impossible odds, and the whole extraordinary journey, ready to unfold all over again. It began life as one of the most vulnerable creatures on the leaf. It survived by hiding, adapting, and sometimes borrowing weapons from the plants it ate. Then, when the time came, it surrendered its old form and emerged with an entirely new way of living. The butterfly may be beautiful, but the real miracle is everything the caterpillar had to survive before it ever earned its wings. If you want to discover more true stories of survival, transformation, and hidden lives from the animal kingdom, subscribe to Wild Side Stories. Because in nature, even the smallest creature can carry an extraordinary story.